Hey friends. So I just have a list of questions and answers that I've compiled. Frequently asked questions about the dirty pours that I do. So the first question is, what recipe do you use? And my answer to that, I wrote it down. Some of these answers are going to be pre-written, and some of them they're very basic, straightforward, and to the point, so I don't feel the need to write them down and read it off. But anyway, the recipe that I use, that's ever changing because there's so many different ways to do pours. My favorite at the moment is 75% Floetrol and 25% paint. And that's acrylic paint for those of you who are new to this. Sometimes I use a splash of water in it just to thin out the paint just a touch. And I'm not using silicone this week. It just varies. Silicone is something that I just discovered I might not use, so we will see how things go. If you keep up with my YouTube channel, you'll start to see different ratios and stuff in some of the videos where I do explain what I have involved in these paintings. Question, what is Floetrol? Floetrol is a paint additive that helps thin the paint. It helps the flow of the paint, and it helps the paint level itself. Floetrol is usually used in paint when you're painting your walls at home. It helps prevent brush marks and streaks, and it makes a nice fine finish. Question, where do you buy Floetrol? I buy my Floetrol at Home Depot or Lowe's. You can also buy it at Walmart. I've seen it online. I would check availability in your stores in your area online before you go, especially if those stores are not close to home, because I don't want you to feel like you're wasting a trip there. I would recommend against buying Floetrol, just my 2 cents, on Amazon. My gallon jug of Floetrol is $13, $14. On Amazon, it's $113. So I would not recommend buying it off of Amazon because it's a $100 markup and it's ridiculous. Even the quarts, the little quart jugs that they have, are still marked up tremendously. So I would recommend going into the store and picking it up yourself. Question, what is silicone used for? Silicone is used to help make cells in your paintings, but Floetrol will also do that. I have paintings where I used silicone in them, and I just did some yesterday where the first one I forgot to add silicone to it, but it was just paint and Floetrol and nothing else. And I already had it upside down, and so I was like, oh, well, I can't add silicone at this point. I'll just see how it turns out, and the cells were beautiful. In my experience, in my opinion now, I would say that silicone, for me, has created smaller cells, and if I use just Floetrol without silicone, I am getting bigger cells, big. It's personal preference. You can do whatever you want. Sometimes you want smaller cells, and sometimes you want larger cells. It all depends on what you want. Question, what kind of silicone do you use? So I like to buy silicone from Amazon. I'm a Prime member, and so it's very helpful for me when I'm ordering a lot of these items off of Amazon where I'm not paying for extra shipping. I'm getting free shipping and a 2-day shipping and blah, blah, blah. So when I'm on Amazon and I'm buying my silicone, I typically buy treadmill belt lubricant. And, sorry. Treadmill belt lubricant, and the treadmill belt lubricant comes in, you can buy it in 2 different packaging or labels, 2 different brands, that's all, but it's 100% silicone, and it's in a bottle like this big. I don't know how many fluid ounces it is off the top of my head, but it's about $10 or $11 per bottle. And you don't really use too much. Some people only use like 3 little drips. I like to use a little more when I am using silicone. One of the labels has, it's like green, black, and white, and one of the labels is just like gray, black, and white. I've only bought the gray, black, and white, but on YouTube I've seen a lot of people use the one with the green in it. Same thing. It's the same thing, just different brands. Sorry. Also, I've tried other silicones. I have tried yesterday, I found at Home Depot a WD-40 silicone spray. I don't think I like it. It kind of creates a dusty appearance. But again, personal preference, whatever you decide you like. I have also used from Home Depot, it's called Blaster something or other. That's a silicone spray as well. And remember, these ones are not 100% silicone, so it's not the same thing as the treadmill belt lubricant, but it still does the job. So the Blaster created really pretty like streaks in my paintings, and I guess at the end of this video I'll go ahead and show which silicones I used in each one, or which ones didn't have silicone in them, so that you can see the difference. I think that's a good idea. And then I've also used a little dripper bottle from Home Depot instead of a spray. I think it's like $3 or $4. It smells really bad. It doesn't mix into the paint very well, so you do have to stir it a little more than you would typically stir in like treadmill belt lubricant. But that one created really, really tiny cells, and I don't think I like that as much. I do like the outcome of the Blaster spray, and I like the outcome of the treadmill belt lubricant. I don't prefer the WD-40 silicone, and I don't prefer the little dripper bottle that I got at Home Depot. I'll post photos and everything of those, either in the description or in the video, just like photos of everything that I'm talking about, just so that you can have a visual if you're a visual person like I am. Let's see. Question, what should the thickness of the paint mixture be? The thickness of the paint mixture, you will feel it while you're mixing it. When you initially pour your acrylic paint, you will notice with different brands that you get, some of them are thicker than others and some are thinner than others. So it really depends on how thick your paint initially is and how much you need to add into it to thin it out. You don't want your paint mixture to be water thin, but you don't want it to be paint thick. You want it to be kind of a nice medium, so when you have it on your canvas, or if you have it on a piece of wood or whatever item you're doing, when you go to like move it around and stuff, it's able to flow off of the edges. I'm going to add a question in quickly just to kind of go along with that. When you're flowing your paint off the edges, you want to make sure that you get enough off, because if it dries with too much paint, it does crack your paint, and you get the little cracks in it, and it looks like the Mojave Desert or whatever, because it just it doesn't dry the way you want it to. It's like mud cracks. Let's see. Where do you buy silicone? So I kind of talked about this, but I'll answer that again. I buy my treadmill belt lubricant from Amazon, or you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you can ask them, or even like Advanced Auto Parts or AutoZone. You can buy just spray bottles of what are those called? Aerosol cans of silicone spray, but it's not going to be 100% silicone. There will be additives in it as well. Question, where do you buy art resin? So this is not something that I've talked about yet. First of all, art resin is a nice clear finish that I have on my paintings when I ship them. It gives it a really, really beautiful shine. It also protects the painting from UV light, like if you have your painting in natural lighting hanging up, it will start to fade your colors, and so art resin helps deter that. Like it keeps it from it helps it last a little bit longer, I should say. So the question is, where do you buy it? And I buy it on artresin.com. And no, I'm not being paid by any of these companies. I'm just saying what works for me and what I've used and where I've gotten them, because they are frequently asked questions. So on artresin.com, they have several different sizes of art resin that you can purchase, whatever's in your price point. Of course, the bigger amounts that you buy, the cheaper it's going to be per ounce. I bought initially, since I do a lot of epoxying on my tumblers that I make, my glittered tumblers, I just went ahead and bought a full gallon of it. It's $119, so you get a half gallon of part A and a half gallon of part B. One is a hardener and one is the resin, and you have to do a 1-to-1 ratio of those. Try to make it as exact as possible. That way you don't have it cure tacky, because then you'll have to sand it and do another layer. I typically do 2 layers anyway, just to be sure and make sure I have nice coverage. Sometimes I have to do 3 layers, just the way the world works. Another question is, can I use epoxy instead of art resin? So some of you guys are familiar with the tumblers and the epoxy that you use in the tumblers. And just a couple brands off the top of my head: Alumilite, Promarine, Pearl FX epoxies. I think there's another one, but I can't remember. Those ones, the Alumilite you can buy at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. The only issue that I have with Alumilite is that it does yellow a lot. And if you even just have it sitting on your countertop or your table or your craft room, whatever, wherever you keep it, you will start to notice that it does yellow a lot. And people have complained about it before, so I would advise against using Alumilite. Pearl FX, I'm not familiar with anymore. I used to use it. I haven't used it in a while, and then I switched to Promarine. Promarine, I have heard so many positive reviews. It is a little finicky when it comes to weather and temperatures. So if you live in a colder climate, I would recommend a little bit against Promarine, because it likes warmer, less humid temperatures to work with, so that it doesn't have little air bubbles in it when it cures. You can buy those 2 online, the Pearl FX and the Promarine. If you just Google Promarine tabletop or countertop epoxy, or Pearl FX countertop epoxy, same thing. Those would be your best bet, and you want to make sure you get that countertop epoxy one, because there are several versions. And Promarine is made for boats, I guess. Promarine. So just make sure that you're getting the countertop or tabletop epoxy, as opposed to like whatever other options they have. And so to answer your question, yes, you can use an epoxy as opposed to the art resin. Art resin, the nice thing about that, and the only reason that I'm using art resin, is because it's BPA free, it's VOC free, which means you don't need to use a mask. There's no harmful chemicals, which means you're not going to have reactions. I guess I should address that a lot of people do have these reactions to their epoxies, like allergic reactions. Their eyes swell up, they have to go to the ER, they have to wear like a full vest, whole outfit, just so that they don't break out in hives and whatnot when they're using it. And I know that sounds really dangerous, but it varies from person to person. And if you have a reaction to it, I recommend against using it and finding a different brand that works well for you. So art resin might be your best bet. And by the way, when the art resin cures, just like the epoxy, it is food incidental safe. So you can use it where things go in contact with food. I would recommend against sealing with Mod Podge or whatever. Mod Podge, once that cures, there is a curing time for everything, but it's not a beautiful finish. And if you were to put food on top of your Mod Podge and like cut into it or something and cut through the Mod Podge, it could potentially ruin your painting. So I recommend using something stronger than just Mod Podge. That was kind of a tangent. So next question, how much do you sell your art for? And I have this already written down because it was something that I wanted to think out a little bit. So I said, that's a pretty personal question, but to answer, you should price your pieces based on your knowledge, experience, time, and effort put into learning the process and into making each item. A good place to start for pricing is to check online at various sites to see what the medium dollar price is. If you're new to a craft and understand you have a lot to learn, you should go on the lower end of price or not sell yet. But if you feel comfortable with your process, you even feel okay with teaching and answering questions, you can probably ask a higher dollar amount because you have a very keen understanding of your craft. And I know a lot of people don't like that answer because it takes a lot of time to learn and become comfortable with a process, like truly, truly comfortable with a process. And my humble opinion, you shouldn't be selling things if you're brand new to an art because it's not a product that people are going to be satisfied with unless you're like some kind of crazy expert immediately. Like if you just catch on and you are amazing and quick learning at these crafts, maybe you should like hold off and try different things, try different techniques, see what works best. I was telling someone today, with all of these different mixtures that you can use, some people use a 50-50 mixture of Floetrol and paint. Some people, like I use a 25% paint, 75% Floetrol. So if you use like different techniques, you will start to get a really, really good understanding of how things work and why they work the way that they do, and what you can use, what you can't use, different things that do the same thing, so on and so forth. My last frequently asked question that I'm going to address is, why do you use Floetrol instead of a pouring medium? Really simple answer. At first, when I started this, I couldn't find a pouring medium in store, and I would have to order it. And I'm a very impatient person, so I have to go to the store and buy whatever I can to make it work when I'm first starting out on learning something. As I become a little more seasoned and a little more comfortable and better at these things, I do order my stuff online, and because it keeps me at my desk working, and it allows me to like spend more time working on stuff. So if I'm running out of like this item, then I'll just go ahead and order it online, and it'll arrive typically about when I'm out of whatever other product I'm using. So I found Floetrol at the store when I was at Home Depot looking for all of my items and trying to buy what I could in store instead of ordering. Pouring medium, also like the Liquitex pouring medium that some people use, and there's nothing wrong with using Liquitex pouring medium as opposed to Floetrol. I just haven't used it, so I can't tell you the difference between the two yet. I know that some people on YouTube have done the difference, so I would type in Floetrol versus pouring medium. Probably a good place to start to find their reactions to the two different pouring mediums, but I just haven't found Liquitex in store, and also it's a little more pricey from my understanding. So us crafters like to go as cheap as possible so that we are able to make our prices a little bit cheaper, and we can also get paid a little bit more so that we can make a living. So thanks for hanging out, guys. I hope you have a great day. If you have any more questions, drop it in the comments below, and I will answer to the best of my ability. I'm not an expert, but I do like to help people with the techniques that have worked for me or what have not worked for me. That way we can all like figure it out together. Have a great day. Bye, guys.